Oh, sounds good. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to bring up my screen real quickly. Can everybody see my slide deck right now?
All good.
All right. So let's see if I can get to present. Okay. So welcome everybody. I am Laura Schmidt. I'm the Chief Talent Development Officer for the Milwaukee Tech Coalition. We are actually a nonprofit organization. We started with just a couple members and we are up to over 90. And our members are either corporate, nonprofit, education institutions. And then we work offline with a lot of you to really try to build capacity for tech talent in the greater Milwaukee region. And so I just want to say thank you for coming, taking time out of a summer day to be with us today. It just is really exciting that you all made it today. I want to just talk a little bit about our mission and our vision really quickly, and then I have, turn it over to Todd, who I'm really excited to hear from today. Our mission is really to inclusively double the tech talent, and that first word is really, really important to us in the greater Milwaukee region. And so when you look at some of these things, you can see what our vision is and why we're doing what we're doing. This in-service is coming out of one of our 6 strategy lanes, which is the K-20 strategy lane. And that's all of K-12 STEM outreach. It's higher education, early talent outreach, and then it's also that transition to the workforce. We have other strategy lanes for out of school youth and also out of school adult learners, so that we won't be really talking as much about that today, but we will be talking about that pipeline going through the education system. And so why an educator in service if we're not necessarily educators? We know how important you are. We know that the only way to really influence students is to do it through educators. And we believe that there's a lot to share around Milwaukee Tech and what we're trying to do in terms of increasing the tech talent in Milwaukee. And so that's why an educator in service today. So thanks again for being here. Just a couple little logistics. Thanks for your active engagement. I was told to keep this to 4 hours. We could have made this a 2-day conference. So what you're going to see is we're going to move very quickly, and I've asked all of our presenters to try to keep their comments at a high level. That's why we have the last 15 minutes of every hour of every segment to be able to break into small groups to have more of a conversation with them and really dive down into your questions. You'll get to choose which groups you're part of. We're not going to do an introduction. The agenda has links to each of the speakers. Feel free to take a look at their LinkedIn profiles, so to know a little bit more about them and their background. And then just take breaks when you need to. They're not built in to this. So there's going to be times where maybe something doesn't feel like it applies to you. Take that moment to take your break. Stay connected so you don't lose the chat, but maybe just turn off your video so that we aren't distracted by whatever you're doing in the background. So you may want to take your opportunity to rename yourself and include your organization so people can get to know you, maybe introduce yourself in Zoom so that people know that you're here and can introduce themselves to you. And then Joe and I and others that are really on will also be moderating the chat for questions or comments or things that just don't seem clear. But know that today's not the only moment that we're going to be talking about what we're talking about today. So what you guys put into the survey is going to inform our next steps, locally, regionally, and even at the state level. So make sure that you all reserve that last 15 minutes to complete that survey today. And then engage in social media. So we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to help you get connected to Milwaukee Tech Hub. And so please feel free to engage in social media. So with that, I am so excited to be able to open things up with Todd McLeese. He's the recently named Global Director of Innovation Outpost. And so the agenda doesn't reflect that because it's that new. So we're very excited to have him. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thanks, Laura. Good morning, everybody. As Laura mentioned, I took on a new role on Tuesday as Global Director for the Innovation Outpost, which is based in Texas. And my job is to grow it into a global entity, but it's a 501c3 focused on underserved communities and bringing the education and learning that employers in the region need. So it's a lot of alignment work with what's going on as well. Laura, if you want to, you just did stop sharing.
Yeah, I'm trying to, yeah.
Take your time.
Joe, are you able
Laura
to
asked me.
Go ahead.
Laura asked me to keep this to 20 minutes. I've never done anything in 20 minutes, so hopefully this will go well. But
Laura, you can stop sharing your screen and Todd will be spotlit.
I actually don't have a stop sharing right now. Can you do that? Oh, there. Sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. So a lot has changed. We all recognize that 2020 was a very different year, and there was so much disruption. There are three major conversations going on right now in companies. It's at least three. It's probably more than that, but the three big ones are around diversity, equity, and inclusion, remote work, which is disrupting even the most mature organizations because we're just not sure how to lead with this level of disruption. And then the impact of intelligent automation. So we've been dealing with automation now since the 50s, so we're about 70 years deep. Manufacturing, for instance, has lost 5 million jobs to a combination of offshoring and automation. But now with intelligent automation, the contribution model of everybody in our organizations is in question. Jobs that we couldn't fill 3 years ago or 18 months ago are now obsolete. And so generally, when I talk to audiences, I stand up and talk about how technology does not displace people, roles evolve, and so forth. But I'm finding out that more and more of that is just untrue. There is significant displacement going on of entire jobs. And so now there's a responsibility that employers have, if they're looking to keep their team intact, to give individuals enough runway for the reskilling and upskilling. And that's why organizations like Milwaukee Tech Hub are so important as it relates to digital skills, data-driven skills, and the things that we need. I was on the phone call earlier this morning with Deloitte, and we were talking about a major shift in one of the largest financial institutions in the world, where they're going from a mainframe environment to a cloud environment. And those mainframers have tremendous compute skills. Hopefully, many of them will transfer over to cloud environments, but they need enough runway, and we have to build leaders. As educators, we have to build leaders that are capable of having the right conversation with enough time. We have to rework the systems. I'll talk a little bit more about disruption now, and we can go from there. So we also have this tremendous opportunity in front of us right now. We are the first generations in history, in all of history, that are experiencing the combination of incredible rates of innovation. Today it's digital, but if you read the tech headlines over the last couple of weeks, there have been many announcements about quantum and the battle for quantum computing power heating up. And so we're actually leaving the digital era during this decade, and we'll move to the cognitive compute or intelligent AI and the quantum era. And that again will be a paradigm shifting for many of us. Combine all of this innovation, which is happening at a rate just so much faster than we've ever experienced in any time in human history. Combine that with longevity, the fact that 4, some would say 5 generations are very active in the workforce today. The thought that we will soon be living to over 90 years of age. By the end of this century, there was news last week, there's a 68% probability that people will live to the age of 124. And we will continue to see this tick up during our lifetimes, during our careers. And this is what we have to prepare people for, is this combination. It's a unique opportunity too for intergenerational learning, but it's the combination of longevity and innovation. In 1800, if I were an adult, I would have seen in the workforce, I may have seen this shift from the agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution, the first one that was steam powered. But it's very unlikely that I could have learned about it from my grandfather who wasn't there to see it. And it was very unlikely that I would be able to share it with my grandchildren because I was dead by the time 37 years of age came along, on average. The same was very true just 100 plus years ago in 1900 with the second industrial revolution. But as we live in the fourth industrial revolution, we have a unique opportunity to take advantage of. And that means we have to be willing to learn in multiple directions from multiple generations, younger than us, older than us, and so forth. And we need to do that in order to deal with the significant disruption that has occurred. Now, many would say that the pandemic was the disruptor. I take a slightly different position, and it's really semantics, but hear me out on this. There are major disruptions that have been going on for a long, long time. The fourth industrial revolution started 14 years ago in 2007, 2008. And the rate of innovation has been a significant issue since then, and it has been causing disruption on a global scale within even the most mature organizations. Globalization has impacted us. We all felt the impact of a broken supply chain in 2020. We just moved. If you're ordering furniture today, you're still feeling the impact of a broken supply chain, where it's taking 9 to 12 months to get furniture that's being ordered. And this is an issue that's based on globalization. We also have to think about digital globalization and the fact that population growth during the rest of this century will occur primarily in Southeast Asia and the African continent. And the jobs, the capabilities, the engineering jobs, the STEM jobs, the compute jobs, many of those are going to be satisfied in those countries on those continents. And then there's unexpected events. And the pandemic is certainly, not really a was yet, it is certainly an unexpected event. The same is true of climate events, the connected labor market crises. And then the second row that you see here are the accelerators to the disruption. The social justice and equity movement is another. What all of those have done, the three disruptions and the four accelerators, is it's forced us to re-examine and re-engineer the way we make decisions, the values and principles, sorry, bad weatherman technique there, values and principles that guide us, the where and how we learn and work, how we add or build value, depending on if we're an employee or a company. Our sense of community is shifting. The geopolitical landscape has shifted. And what we need today are human-centric systems based on personal narratives, finding passion, the passion to explore new opportunities, and then building scalable learning platforms. That's how the most significant organizations in the world today, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, Amazon, that's how they have built the incredible value within their companies, is by building scalable learning platforms. And that starts within education. Very quickly, just to understand this issue around human adaptability, which is in fact improving. We are adopting technologies faster. We are adapting much more quickly. That was pushed to the limit in the past year. But what we are not doing is improving that capability to adapt at an exponential rate. It's technology that is improving at an exponential pace. Those lines crossed in 2007, which happens to be the same year that the public cloud became widely available. The iPhone was released in 2007. If you take a look at sort of 2006 to 2008, just about every significant brand, some of whom I just mentioned, were either born during those years or they scaled significantly during those years. Now we're in the age of artificial intelligence. It will become much more prevalent by 2025 in our daily lives, in the workplace. As I said, we just moved. We've got Siri and Alexa competing with each other throughout our home. So home automation is a very basic form of AI, but some of the deep learning, the data-driven analytics that are a function of artificial intelligence today, the world is different. The world that we're sending young learners into, the world that those of us who are on the back nine of our careers have to deal with, it's very different than it's ever been. And we need to build scalable learning systems to respond. So this, I think we can all accept this old economy industrial model of a front-loaded education followed by generating some value within our career over the course of, say, 35 to 45 years. This model is gone, right? The way that was built is that I would work until I'm 65 or 68 years old. I'd retire for 5 years, and then I would just die. That's how our system is built. We're not here with 35-year retirement programs in place. That's on all of us individually. What is not happening right now is the great reskilling. This is a fallacy. Many of us think about it this way because we're used to this paradigm where even just going back to 1990, if I learned a new set of technical skills, the value of those skills lasted, the half value or half life of the value of those skills was something like 26 years. So if I were able to just reskill one time during a 45-year career, I was good. But today, the half-life of the value of those skills is compressing to such a point where it's really 18 months to 5 years as opposed to 26 years. And so this model isn't going to work for us. It doesn't scale well at all. What we really need is a model that looks much more like this. It's a model where we expect that the Gen Z individuals who are just entering the workforce now, they will have on average 17 jobs in 5 different industries across a career that spans 55 to 70 years. Think about that, 17 jobs in 5 different industries. What we're talking about is the need for skill sets that make us more adaptable. We need to teach people some agility, self-agency, learning in multiple domains, because I can't have the portability across 5 different industries in 17 different jobs if I don't develop skills across multiple domains. And again, throughout my career, not just at the front end, but throughout my career. So what we're talking about is creating the lifelong learning systemic engine. And that means that our mental models have to shift from the third industrial revolution, which was the era of compute and the need for STEM skills. Now, the computing era really started, the third industrial revolution, around 1969. I know that because that's the same year I started. And the STEM movement by name really got going in 2001. So imagine 3 decades to get started. And now we're 20 years into that movement. We don't have 30 years this time because of the rate of innovation. We don't have 30 years for the next movement to get started. We have to begin to build and deliver these systems right now. And what does that mean from an educational standpoint? If we take a look at the old model of education on the left, you'll find we focused on foundational skills. We get people prepared for their first career. We get people prepared for college, et cetera. It's very linear. Today, we have to be much more explicit about a sense of purpose. Not to say that every young learner is going to leave the halls of our institutions of education knowing what their purpose is, but just understanding the importance of having that sense of purpose. Maybe some tools to find it for themselves throughout their life as it continues to evolve. We have to focus on adapting. We have to focus on experiential and work-based learning. We have to build systems that allow people to understand that they will constantly not just be adding skills, but also shedding skills, letting go of skills that become irrelevant because of intelligent automation. So it's all about building that adaptive mindset and giving people the meta skills, the human skills that allows for this type of model. Imagine for a moment if you just take a look at your phone and you see all the apps on the front screen. And if I asked you to delete 3 of those apps right now, how hard would it be just on that first screen for you to delete 3 apps? Now, if you think about that in the context of skills, how hard would it be for me to say those 3 skills that you built your life around, that helped you put food on the table, that helped you provide for your family, that helped you raise your kids, let go of those 2. Maybe you find self-worth in those skills that are being automated and so forth. Well, without the understanding of your contribution model, what that means going forward for you within the organization, within society, within your own life, without the ability to build new skills and knowledge, without the ability to understand how technology will augment our capabilities and potentially eventually replace certain capabilities, our willingness to let go of those skills will plummet. And so this is the challenge for leadership right now, is to find a way to let people navigate this path where we're constantly letting go of skills, constantly learning new skills, constantly building upon ourselves and our capabilities and leveraging those within the organization. That's the conversation we have to have. And that's the conversation that takes more than a 90-day triage and acute management system for skill building and boot camps and talent accelerators and so forth. The time to have this conversation is early in life, to let people know that this is what we're dealing with. Or within organizations, the time to have this conversation is in a very proactive way with regard to cultural shift, that we understand that it's not just about learning the next technical skill that will erode in value faster than ever. It's about building skills in every way, right? We talk about robot proof, and you can see the 3 on the right, but it's bigger than that. It's about building the knowledge and the literacies, building STEM capabilities, having those data skills, being extraordinarily human-centric in the way we design these systems. Now, I have a framework. It's got more than 100 collaborators around the country, really the world, but there's only a few outside of the US. Called Human Skills for the Next Era of Innovation. I'll provide some links to the group today that will give you access to all this content. No need to understand this now. It's based on, thank you, Joe. It's based on, that's actually 5 minutes is gonna be easy. I can slow down. There's 4 imperatives. The first imperative is around the need for continuous self-innovation and learning. And this has to do with agency, it has to do with motivation and growth mindset and so forth. So 2 mindsets and 6 skills in each quadrant. The second has to do with exploring and unleashing human potential. Here you can see the skills that are in significant demand since the beginning of 2020. Creativity, emotional intelligence, and all of its subscales, like resilience and self-awareness and so forth, empathy. And then on the right side, you see the need for human connection and collaboration. And much of that has to do with new forms of collaboration and communication. And then lastly, the inevitability of human beings converging with machines in the workplace. So how do we work alongside the intelligent technologies? How do we become superhuman in the roles that we play by leveraging intelligent technologies alongside of us? All of this is to say that STEM is not enough. It's an imperative. It's an absolute requirement. Digital skills, data skills, not enough. Absolutely required in order to survive. Prerequisites. But when we think about STEM, we also have to think about the human side of STEM. We have to build STEM learners and professionals who have a strong sense of self, who have an ability to work within teams, who have the ability to help us understand the areas around science and technology that they can help us explore. They have the ability to explain and help us leverage machines, all of us, in more distinct and productive ways than we ever could imagine on our own. This is where STEM can really play a role throughout organizations, regardless of role. This is what we need every engineer to be thinking about as they think about their contribution model within every organization. It's about the human side of our organizations. That's what will make us strongest. Now, of course, there's lots of models to take a look at the sense of purpose. It's at the very center. I happen to use Ikigai. You could also use Simon Sinek. The tools don't matter as much. But helping young people, and I was just having this conversation with my son, who's 25 years old and a Buddhist monk, and my dad, who's 79 years old, and literally my dad, unsolicited, said he figured out his purpose 5 years ago at the age of 74. And I wonder if we have that much time today. We know that organizations need to be, there's a calling by young people in our organizations to be more purpose-driven, to be more involved in the community, to be involved in the issues around equity and the disparity in learning outcomes and economic opportunities and so forth. And so as educators for both young learners, adult learners, lifelong learners, one opportunity we have is to help people underscore the importance of purpose, their sense of purpose, their ability to figure that out, our ability to help guide them. Because without it, the hardest skill that we have as human beings, the very most difficult thing that we can do is to learn how to let go. Whether it's a technical skill that we have to let go of because it's no longer of value in the workplace, whether it's human beings, whether it's letting go of ego and needing to be right in a conversation as opposed to being data-driven or collaborative. It's the very hardest thing for us to do. And it is, in a world where we have longevity and innovation coexisting for the first time ever in human history, it is the hardest thing to manage. It's the hardest challenge to manage in organizations. And the sooner we can instill that in ourselves, in our peer groups, in our schools, the better chance we'll have. And I think by some miracle, I'll let go and say I finished a little early.
Dude, you did it.
Thanks
you
for
did it. Thank you, Todd. Laura, I hand things back over to you. And I hope everyone's enjoying my very low-tech way of giving time reminders to folks. I just wrote it on a sticky note. Laura, I think you've got the next 5 minutes or so.
I do, yeah. And I'm going to go fast for all of you because I want to make sure that we give enough time for everybody. And just bringing up our slide deck. Okay, and I'm trying to, let's see, am I available to share again?
Yep.
All right. So one of the things, this is not what you want to see. So let me just go back here. Can you guys see my slide deck?
Yes, we can.
All right, fabulous. So I am gonna present from here. And really all I want to do is share a few things about why the Milwaukee, our why. So I think it was really good that Todd sort of brought up data. And I'm going to go through these slides very quickly because they will be available to you afterwards. But I really wanted to make sure you understood why the coalition is so passionate about this for all the reasons Todd just mentioned. So Todd was really the one that got me so excited about all of this collective work over the years. He's a true thought leader, and we can't, say thank you enough for him being here. One of the things that we know for the coalition is that we have the ability, if we do our work well through our partnerships with others, many of you on the call today, we will be able to provide life-changing jobs. And so we're already seeing that in a lot of our upskilling or reskilling efforts of non-traditional talent or adult learners. Many of you that are on the call are already part of that work. And also reaching into K-12 and our higher education system to be able to provide supplemental programming that might allow people to understand the wide array of opportunities that are available to them if they did not receive that information earlier. So that's really, really important. We know that we have a data issue, we have a jobs issue, we have a skills issue in the region. The other thing I want you to know, though, is that even though our mission is to inclusively double the tech talent in the Milwaukee region, we can't steal it from other places. But when we talk about inclusively doubling the talent, one of the things we have to look at is, well, what tech talent? One of the things you all probably ask is, well, which skills are the most important? And this was, these skill sets are from an MC report that we commissioned through the coalition last year. And we dove down into which ones were going to be most in need in the region. Then we took a look and we said, wait a second, where can we reskill from? And on this slide, what we're seeing is that there isn't any place to do adjacent, like reskilling from adjacent skill sets. So for those of you that are involved in things, a lot of times we're asked, well, where could we do some reskilling? So to Todd's point, you know, like sometimes that fallacy doesn't really work. Right now, we don't have people in adjacent skill sets that if we take them and upskill them into other roles that we need, we then create a new gap. So it isn't that we can pull people from other areas. And I think that that's really important because that did affect the way in which we talked about reskilling and the strategies that we're using with the coalition around re and upskilling. The other thing is that we know that most of our openings are requiring 2+ years experience or a bachelor's degree. Now, any of you that are connected to our work know that we are talking a lot about, you know, pushing back on whether or not that's really, really required, or whether or not we just haven't gotten to the pain point yet where we have to reevaluate the education level or the education credentials of someone that's coming in for a tech-related role. So regardless of that philosophical argument, which is really important to have, the reality is students who are not coming out of a 2-year or 4-year experience are going to have a really hard time breaking their way into tech. And we're working on that in a separate strategy lane, but this is important, and this is why we spend so much time focusing on that K-20 strategy lane. The other thing is when we look at diversity in the Milwaukee region, it's really important that we look at how we're doing. And even though it doesn't seem great, we're actually doing somewhat average in comparison to the national numbers that we see. So we'll hear a lot about all the negativity about you know, Milwaukee maybe not doing everything it needs to be or needs to do, but we are doing good work, and we just have to do it better, faster, and we have to grow capacity through our partners. The other piece that's on this is that I think the most important thing we realized is that if we continue down the path that we are, our higher ed pipeline will not change the demographic makeup of our tech workforce. It won't. So something has to change in order for the higher ed pipeline to start contributing to a more diverse tech workforce. And so these charts really would show you sort of what we might have to do in order to move the needle on what we say we want to see. And the most important thing I think that came out of the DICE report recently, this is a diversity, equity, and inclusion report, is that we know that the sentiment is that everybody does believe that diversity in our tech workforce is really important to business results. What we're finding is that we're just in this time when we don't necessarily have the collective knowledge base on how to do it well. And so those are the things that we're talking about with the coalition. And I just wanted to let you know a little bit about our why. We work very hard with a very small team, but the reason that we've been able to do as much as we have is because of all of the people that are on this call and all of the people that are connected to our work in some other way. And I just want to say thank you for that. One of the things I wanted to just put up was our 6 strategy lanes. Again, today we're really diving into more of that K-20 piece, but we do have these other strategy lanes that also form the overall body of work that the coalition is doing right now. And lastly, I would like to be able to close my comments with some of the things that we've been doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a board goal that says that we have to have 50% representation from those that are traditionally underrepresented in tech. That means every program that is funded by the coalition has to meet that goal, or it won't be refunded, or it won't be renewed. So I think that that's something that's really important for me to let you know, is that this is a really significant commitment for our board of directors, our advisory committee, and every subcommittee that works on our strategy lanes. And so I just wanted to be able to reinforce that with everyone on the call today. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Tina, who's going to talk a little bit about CS4All and walk those of you that are interested in doing this through a visions activity to start finding your why.
Thank you so much, Laura, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for all the great words that have been shared. I took lots of notes, but I know we don't have time to go back and talk about what another person has spoken about. So thank you for everything that we've heard so far. This so sorry. This section, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the CS for All's visions activity, finding your why. And as a CS for All script facilitator, I've had the opportunity to work with teams and to walk them through the activity in this whole script process. And just for those of you who don't know CS for All's mission is to make high quality computer science an integral part of the educational experience of all K-12 students and teachers, and to support student pathways to college and career success. And so one of the key programs that CS for All utilizes to focus districts on having system change to be able to start the conversation and to come together and create that aligned conversation around getting on board with CS education. We use the SCRIPT model, and SCRIPT stands for Strategic CS for All Resource and Implementation Planning Tool. And essentially, the tool helps bring teams together, and we'd like to have teams where we have the teachers involved, we have administrators involved, we have librarians involved, counselors, administrators, and even up to the superintendent, for those collective voices to come together in determining the whole schema, or the whole creating that alignment for the district as they move toward creating a model for CS. And so when you think about why script, it's not a one size fits all model, which often doesn't work for every educational system. We just don't squeeze it into one. The goal is to create a framework to connect with CS for All members and resources for the problems that you're trying to solve. Our goal is to really allow educational systems to set the priorities and select the characteristics for partners that fit their needs. And for those of you who have not gone through, we have a rubric that allow you to work with partners and community to help bring this whole plan together. And the last thing, or the last why for script, is to integrate into existing infrastructures and processes. So it's not it's a systems change model, but you're not changing, you're integrating this work in what you're already doing. So CS visions, really setting a district vision. This came out of the work from over 50 CS education stakeholders out of the New York City area. And this was funded by a grant from the National Science Foundation to be able to start understanding what is this vision, why, coming to this whole framework of understanding how to get aligned as a team. And so CS for What? This was created by some colleagues within the CS for All organization, Rafi Santo, Sarah Vogel out of CUNY, and Dixie Chang. And there's actually a CS for What. If you go to the CS for All website, you can get the white paper that was created to understand the diverse visions of computer science education and practice. And the one key thing is there isn't one purpose for education. There shouldn't be one purpose for computer science education either. So we're beginning to look at all the purposes for education. John Dewey said in 1938, educational plans and projects must have a philosophy. Otherwise, they are at the mercy of every intellectual breeze that happens to blow. And we don't want that to happen for CS education. Being an educator in the classroom, I can remember when the districts would bring a new initiative, we would say as teachers, oh, that's here today and it's going to be gone tomorrow. But we're striving to not have this be a situation where it's here today and gone tomorrow. So why even bother with it? Our visions should really shape the pedagogy that we practice. There's been decades of research on large-scale instructional change that really backs up this thought. So when we look at a coherent instructional system, we're looking at how at the center that our core values and our rationales begin to shape the learning principles that happen in the classroom. How do we get our students to learn? And then the goals, taking those standards that we have already for CS and having the core values and rationales at the center, it then expands out and it have us look at what is happening within the teacher learning system. How are they learning? Are they learning in teams, collaborative time? What types of PD are they participating in? As well as the curricular system. What are the course offerings? How is that scope and sequence aligned? And so as we look at that, we want everything to be coherent. And so we start off looking at the purpose of education, truncating in a longer session we would look at the purpose of education. We'd look at our current initiatives. What are we doing? But then we want to move toward what is the rationale? Why is CS important for our students? And then the district, as you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, what is our vision statements? We then begin as a team in the script training to create a vision around for your district as we look at aligning these rationales and these purposes of education. And what does then the CS vision look like at the end? We won't do that today, but I'll give you an experience on how to start looking at what are your core values. So if we had time, I would ask you, what is one purpose of education? What are the most important needs of your students and community? And then what are the major initiatives in your school or learning education agency right now? But we won't do that, but just take a mental note. So when we think about articulating a CS vision, it is comprised of 5 key elements. So we have our rationales, we have our core values, which then goes into shaping how do we design a CS vision. We then, set it up for implementation, and we look at the impacts that we have once we have a CS vision aligned and in place for our school or our district. So let me just give you some quick examples of what a rationale would be. So we have 7 key impact areas that we say that was found in this research that are critical areas: personal agency, joy, and fulfillment. As our first speaker was talking about some of those things as we think about globalization, as we think about change. Is it economic and workforce development? Is that important? Competencies and literacies, is that important? School reform and improvement. We have equity and social justice, technological, social, and scientific innovation. We talked about that and heard that in our first speaker. Citizenship and civic engagement. So those are the areas that we look at. So then you start thinking, why should we teach education? Kids need to know how the digital world works in order to participate in it well. And so I'll just click through a couple. They need to know how to prepare for it. So that's citizenship and civic engagement. We want to promote diverse getting excited, diverse tech workforce. So we started looking at economic and workforce development. And then we look at equity. If we said we wanted to teach CS because we wanted to allow students to solve the problems, we would be looking at technological and social and scientific innovation, equity and social justice. Thank you. And so on and so forth. So what could this mean for classroom? You're going to go into your group and you're going to do the visions quiz with your facilitator, whatever group you choose. You're going to take this activity and then you're going to tally, and we're going to look at what that looks like. And you're going to see something like that. Your facilitator will walk you through it, and we will tally to see what we come up with. The instructions are there. We will see as a group, how do we define what is our rationale in that small group for students learning? And that was it. I think I did it in a good time. Questions and answers, we'll get them in our small groups. And here's my contact information, and I'll stop sharing.
Tina just knocked it out of the park. Spot on with timing. Bravo. All right. So as Tina mentioned, and as I posted in the chat here, we've got a few breakout rooms that are set up for y'all. Zoom is kind of cool because there's a feature that allows you to select which room you want to go into. So I've got one set up for to connect again with Todd to talk about the future of work, one for Laura to talk about the Milwaukee Tech Hub Coalition, and then a couple of different rooms for this visions activity, small group sort of conversation type stuff. So you can select any room that you want to go into. I have them set for 13 minutes. They'll count down, they'll end, and we'll all come back together for the next section of this in-service. If you have any issues selecting a room to get into, I'm happy to manually put you into one as well. And so I'm going to hit go, and we're going to see how this goes.